Yeah, so we're talking about drama this afternoon, also known as conflict. And some of you feel like your lives have just been one conflict after another. Maybe one relationship has been defined that way. Conflict sucks our emotional energy and just gnaws at us. And, is there a way that we can deal with conflict in a healthy manner? And there is. There are a number of ways, and I want to share just one way with you right now. It's the words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. One verse. And in that verse, he's going to point out, Jesus is going to mention 6 things that you can do to resolve this conflict. But the interesting thing, or maybe not it's interesting, it might be a little sad or painful, is that if there are 6 right ways of dealing with conflict, there are also 6 wrong ways. 6 ways you can get off the conflict resolution train. 6 ways that you can complicate the issue. 6 ways that you can make the conflict worse. So we're going to look at this verse, Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. Talk about how Jesus said we should deal with conflict, and then also look at the temptations of how we can kind of mess things up. And, when we do this, evaluate your own conflict, that you might be in with someone at work or at home, and see where are you in the peace process, or where would you like to be, and, maybe what can I do to take the next step. Credit where credit is due. Great book. Everybody's normal till you get to know them. John Ortberg is a good author, and some of this message is based upon what he wrote. So let's just jump right in right now. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 18, verse 15, "If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won your brother over." That's it. That's the explanation. That's the guidance. That's the directive. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. And if you just take what Jesus says in this verse and start applying it to some of the conflict in your life, I think you're going to get some emotional energy back. I think you're going to get some healed relationships. I think you might even establish or get some breakthrough that you've been probably wanting for a long time. So let's just take this bit by bit. First thing he says, number 1, if your brother or sister sins, and we'll stop right there. Okay? The first right way to deal with conflict, according to Jesus, is simply just admit that there's a conflict. Acknowledge that there's an issue. If your brother or sister sins, it's kind of implied that something's wrong and you're admitting it. So the right way to start is just admit there's a conflict. The wrong way, and a lot of us get sucked into this, is to ignore it. No, everything's fine. I don't have a problem. No, everything is good. Everybody's got this conflict alarm, I call it. And basically when we're offended or somebody does something to us, that alarm goes off. Well, a lot of people spend a lot of energy trying to turn the radio up so they don't hear the conflict alarm, or turn the volume up on something else in their life so they don't hear the conflict alarm. And they're walking around saying, everything's good, when deep down they know, and everybody around them knows, it isn't good. So the first thing that you need to do to get on this conflict resolution train is to, 1, just to acknowledge that there's a conflict. Number 2 is this next one word. Jesus says, if your brother or sister sins, go. So we're going to talk for this about a couple of minutes here. Jesus says go. He makes a command. Who is he making the command to? If your brother or sister sins, you go. You, the one who's wounded, go. And Jesus is saying the right way to deal with conflict here is to own responsibility. You go. You don't sit and you don't wait, and you don't wait for the other person to kind of ask for forgiveness and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I was wrong. No. You go. Right way, own responsibility. Wrong way, pout and stew. You sit there in your chair, at your desk, all sorts of bent out of shape because you were wronged, and you're waiting for them to own responsibility. Well, Jesus said, no, you know what? You might not have started it, but you can start the peace process. You go. You go, Jesus said. Don't wait for the other person to go. Don't pout and steam. A lot of people get stuck there. They think, well, I was the one who was hurt. They need to come to me. You might not have started again, but you can start the peace process. Jesus said, if your brother or sister sins against you, go. Now there's the implied command, you go, but then also number 3 here, using the word go, this third thing that you can do right is go as the verb. Get up and do something. Just don't sit in your chair. Go, and the right way to deal with conflict is to approach the other person. The wrong way is to avoid them. You know, it's like you're walking down the hallway and your arch enemy starts coming in the opposite direction. And you're like, oh, I forgot my pencil at my desk. Or, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. Oh, what's that on the wall as we walk by? So even though you walk right by them, you're avoiding them with your eyes. You know, just because you can be right next to somebody does not mean that you can't avoid them, because you can. How many times have you've been fighting with your spouse, and then you're in a public spot and you send those little silent, subtle messages that communicates only to her or him, that you're pissed at him, and you're avoiding them. Jesus said, go. It's a verb. It implies you get up and you do something. The right way to approach, the wrong way to avoid. So that's 3 points right there. Acknowledge the conflict is the right way. Own responsibility, you go. And then number 3, approach and go. And now number 4, Jesus says, go and point out their fault. You just don't go to them and punch them in the face. Or you just don't go to them or stick your finger in their chest. Jesus says when you go to them, when you approach them, you point out their fault. Tell them specifically what the issue is. The right way to deal with conflict is to be complete, to be direct. The wrong way to deal with conflict is to be incomplete and to be indirect. A lot of times when we go and we approach the other person, we'll tell, we don't want to hurt their feelings, or we don't want to get a full-blown confrontation, so we'll beat around the bush and we'll kind of get just, if the issue is my wife doesn't screw the cap on the toothpaste, I might say, honey, can you please clean up the kitchen or the bathroom when you're done? Or can you please watch out, over yourself? And she has no idea what I'm talking about. I don't want to get in the fight, so I give her 80% of the information. A lot of times, people who don't like conflict, this is where they fall short. But then there's the other person who will come, and if the issue is the toothpaste, it's like, I'm so mad at you, you mess up everything. And so she doesn't even know what the issue is. All she knows is that I'm mad. The focus is on the anger, not the issue. Jesus said, go and point out their fault. Don't tell them how big of a loser they are or anything like that. Go and point out their fault. And you might wonder, well, how can I do that? Let me give you 4 things to consider. If you have to approach somebody in a conflict, these are 4 important pieces of information for you to communicate. And if you miss out on any one of these 4, you haven't given 100% of the communication. Maybe you gave 80%, but 80% might not be enough. Okay, so the 4 things. Number 1, describe what happened. Describe in your own words what you observed, your side of the story, if you will. Okay, here's just the facts, man. Number 2 is explain how it hurt you. Okay, maybe it made you feel like a piece of crap. Maybe it felt like you weren't trusted. Maybe it felt like, you were unnecessary. Well, what exactly did it do to hurt? How did it make you feel? Number 3, describe the consequences. And now I just feel like I don't want to come to work anymore, or I don't trust this relationship, or I can't feel confident that you're going to follow, whatever. What are the consequences? And then number 4, ask for the change that you would like. Going back to the toothpaste. Carrie, can you please screw the cap on the toothpaste, or at least buy toothpaste that doesn't have a cap that can fall off, so we don't have this issue? So those are the 4 things. Again, describe what you observed, explain how it hurt, describe the consequences, and ask for the change you would like. So we move on. Jesus says, if your brother or sister sins, go, point out their fault. And number 5, do it just between the 2 of you. The right way to deal with conflict is do not bring in third parties. Handle it one-on-one. The wrong way to deal with conflict, and a lot of people deal with this, is to build a darn army. So when somebody offends you, instead of going to the one person you should go to, you go to everybody else and you say, can you believe what so-and-so did? Can you believe what she did or he did? And now everybody, is on your side, patting you on the back, just saying, oh man, you're such a good guy and I can't believe they did that. And everybody's on your side and you feel really good. And everybody in the office knows about the issue except the one person that needs to know. That's kind of what we do. You might say, but I'm trying to get counsel. I'm trying to figure things out. I need to talk it out. And that's good. If you want to talk to somebody else about how to initiate the peace process, if you want to talk to someone else about conflict resolution, that's great. Just check your heart. Because it's not about rehearsing an argument. Because a lot of times that's what you're doing. You just want to rehearse your argument so you're fully loaded when you get to talk to them. Or it's not about recruiting an ally. It always needs to be about reducing the conflict. So no third parties. So we're at the last one right now. And again, Jesus said, if your brother or sister sins, acknowledge the conflict, go, which means number one, own responsibility, which means number two, approach the person, point out their fault, be direct and be complete. And remember those 4 points that I told you. Do it just between the two of you. Okay? Don't do it in the break room. Don't do it in the PT formation. Don't do it in a way or in a time that they're going to be embarrassed. Use sensitivity. No third parties, don't build an army. And finally, the last one. Jesus said, if they listen to you, you have won them over. Most important point of all. And it outlines the whole purpose of everything we've just talked about and every effort you make in reconciliation and the peace process. And that is the right way of dealing with conflict, is having the goal of reconciliation, having the goal of healing the relationship, having the goal of not winning, that's the wrong way, but winning them over. Okay? The goal of the peace process, the goal of conflict resolution is reconciling with that person. The wrong way to do it is just seeking to win. How can I win this argument? How can I win this debate? How can I get my way? How can I convince them that they were wrong and they kowtow to me? That's the wrong way. Okay? So it's a heart check time. Are you in a place that you want to reconcile the relationship? Then we begin the peace process. And we do it the way that Jesus taught us. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. Thank you. Walk in peace. And I'm going to do something a little different that I haven't normally done. I think I'm going to put some questions on the screen right now for you to think about as we close up this week's message. I do thank you for listening. We're going to have a message every week, and I hope that they can make a difference in your life. So stay tuned for those questions right now.